Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and also to the ranking member. And thank you so much for the opportunity this morning to discuss this legislation. And thank you, Mr. Ned, for your service and also for being here with your testimony today. The Buffalo Tract legislation is named for the shape of one of 4 parcels of land the communities in New Mexico's 1st Congressional District have been fighting for decades to protect and have withdrawn from further mineral development. Sandoval County, New Mexico has 6 gravel mines, including 4 of the state's largest already in the area. These communities have been fighting for decades to protect these tracts from multinational companies who are seeking to come in and build a deeply unpopular gravel mine that will further pollute these communities and the surrounding landscape. Let me be clear. These lands are sacred. They are ancestral to the surrounding Pueblo tribes whose stories and history are tied directly to these lands. These lands are a vital wildlife corridor between 2 mountain ranges and the Rio Grande River. These lands are adjacent to the community of Placitas and Las Huertas land grant and will be heavily impacted. Over the last year, I have crisscrossed my district and, yes, held town halls in the community of Placitas, and I have heard from hundreds of New Mexicans that are deeply concerned about this and other similar issues. In fact, last week, I was fortunate enough to meet with the governor and leadership of Santa Ana Pueblo, who shared about the historical and cultural importance of these ancestral lands, which are tied to the origins of the Pueblo itself. When I speak to the residents of Placitas, Santa Ana, San Felipe, Bernalillo, and the other communities that are nearby, they are clear and unified in opposition to the development of these lands. In fact, when BLM released their draft resource management plan in 2012, the community mounted an unprecedented response, submitting more than 17,000 public comments in opposition to mining on these tracts. This number represents thousands more than actually even submitted comments, 17,000 public comments in opposition to the development of these lands. Our local leaders, our tribal leaders, our residents are gravely concerned about the cultural, environmental, and public health impacts of this development. The location is especially dangerous as it's intermixed with residential areas and the cumulative impacts of existing mines. It is an extremely beautiful landscape that has significant cultural importance and has doubled its population size since 1992. It provides a wildlife corridor for deer, elk, wild turkey, and pronghorn antelope that connects the Sandia and Sangre de Cristo mountains. And these lands are Pueblo lands that have ancestral and important histories also tied to our land grants. Sand and gravel mining in the area has already stripped the surrounding landscape. It is clear this is not the right area for new development, and the Bureau, in fact, has already identified that there are ample supplies of gravel in surrounding and other sites in order to meet the needs of the Albuquerque area and other surrounding areas in New Mexico. We do not need to be mining in culturally and environmentally sensitive areas. The community has said it loud and clear. They do not want these mines and the false economic promises that come with them. It is criminal and unconscionable to put profits and the bottom line of multinational corporations between the cultural, historical, and environmental well-being of our communities. And that is why we have introduced this legislation, because legislative withdrawal is the best way to protect these lands permanently and to do exactly what we were asked to do when we were elected, which is to listen to and act on the will of our communities. Mr. Ned, I deeply appreciate your testimony and the BLM and Department of Interior's testimony in support of this legislation. Madam Secretary Deb Haaland championed this bill and carried this bill when she sat in this seat herself, a descendant of a Pueblo in New Mexico. I know that the department is committed to listening to our tribes and our Pueblos, but I would like to ask you here today to reaffirm that commitment, that you will listen to our communities and do everything in your power administratively and legislatively to protect these lands.
Absolutely, Congresswoman.
Thank you very much. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I cede back.